Hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Extreme Improv Podcast Skills Show. In this weekly series, my name is David Postanski, by the way, just so you wonder who is, but David will. I will discuss different techniques, tips, advice for how you can become a better improviser. So how you can perform on stage, doing improv, or if it's in rehearsal, or so on and so forth, and have the most successful time possible. So, on today's episode, I'm going to be discussing the idea of working with someone that you've never worked with before. So, if you're doing improv, the idea is that you just do it. You do something which you haven't prepared before, you haven't rehearsed it before. Now, that isn't to say that you can't rehearse in improv, and the point of the rehearsals in improv is to practice the skills so that you feel confident that you know what you'll be able to do, know that you'll be able to keep going, know that you'll be able to work with other people on stage and make things up as you go along. But because of the nature of this, it sometimes means that people rock up to do an improv show, and when they rock up to do an improv show, they may turn up late, they may come from a far distance away, and then you might meet 5 minutes before the show, an hour before the show. You might do a warm-up or run through a couple of games, or make sure you're on the same page with what the format and style of improv is going to be. But then you'll get on stage and you'll be performing in front of an audience together, and you don't know this person. Literally, I've had it in an improv show many, many years ago. I did a show with a company called Flux, called Night London, at the Tristan Bates Theatre in London. And the idea was that there was an ongoing, soap opera style improv show, and an actor would come in and be revealed as someone's father. Now, kudos to the company for doing this show. There was a serialised one, and sometimes this does happen, but clearly there was an element of pre-planning to think, right, I'm going to bring in this actor who's going to be revealed to be someone's father. And the way it worked is literally they just came in at a certain point. It was pre-planned. So not entirely improv, but everything that happened thereafter when they came in the room was improvised. They came into the room, the other performers on stage had a look on their face like, what the hell is happening? Wasn't me in this particular scene. And they just continued improvising as if you could clearly see they were feeling out, is this meant to happen? Who is this person? Because they'd never met this person before. This person coming into the scene, being revealed as the mystery family member, he clearly had a slight idea of, right, I'm going to come in, I'm going to say I'm the father, and whatever they say to me, I'll respond back. So he had an idea what was going on. But the people who had this surprise, the characters who suddenly, oh, this is our father, they didn't have a clue what was going on. Truthfully, I didn't think it was that good, but I didn't think the show was the greatest format. And again, that's not to slate them. It's just that if you have an improvised serial, like a drama, a soap opera, and it goes on many episodes, unless your audience keeps coming back, it's going to be difficult for them to appreciate all of the things that's going on episode to episode. And the revelation of this new character didn't go over massively well with the audience, just because they didn't get it. So, just as a side point, I'd say if you're going to do a show like that, don't do a show with this, oh my God, that was an amazing twist across episodes just for yourself. It has to always be with the audience in mind, because otherwise, well, you could do it just for yourself, but the audience may not get it. And so I always think there's a risk that if you start getting into the patting yourself on the back for, that was really good, you just didn't understand the audience, there's an issue there. So anyway, that's an example, a big example, a little sidestep to say about an example of how you can end up improvising with someone on stage you've never worked with. It can also happen in short form. I've guested on shows many times. I've guested with shows in different countries, and you just turn up and you have to launch into it and do it. So what you have to do is, there may be a slight feeling out period, like 1 or 2 scenes, 1 or 2 games, where you feel like, okay, so what style of humour is here? if you don't know the audience, and you shouldn't know the audience pretty much most times you're doing a show because you can never be certain who's there, you want to get a feel for what kind of things they're going to respond to. You know, can you push boundaries? Can you swear? Can you do they just want puns? Do they, want musical theatre? What kind of thing will the audience respond to? And in the same sense, you need to see what your scene partner, if you've never worked for them before, what they're going to respond to, what is their area of expertise. And you might not ever find this out, but if you start to see something they're comfortable with, then run with it. Now, just in the same sense that you see what they're not comfortable with, don't launch into a scene with someone you've never met before and suddenly grab them around the face and start kissing them and hugging them and throwing them about as if you're fighting them or something. Understand there's a personal boundary and there's personal trust that has to be earned and built up. You can't just launch yourself at someone and think it's okay to go within their personal space, their bubble. There's so many improv groups nowadays have policies about personal space, harassment, sexual harassment, code of conduct, that these things, and it's sometimes struck me as like, why is this such the talk of the town in the improv world over the last 2-3 years that I've seen? And the reason for it is because, unlike most other types of theatre show that you do, you are going to be doing stuff that the other people aren't prepared for. So it's about knowing what the ground rules are going in. If you're working with someone you've never met before, if you're guesting on someone else's show or someone's guesting on your regular show, you have to assume that not everyone is going to 100% know what the boundaries are. The more that time goes on, and with things like equity out there in this country, which is the Actors Union, there are standards and there's minimum expectations set. When you're more comfortable with people, you may think, okay, I can always do this to this person. Or, okay, that person, they've got a physical injury, or this person, they're sensitive about this body part or something. So you just know through getting to know someone, I shouldn't sometimes even mentioning someone's physical characteristic or something about them, it may be a sensitive area, a sensitive subject that you don't want to upset someone, you don't want to hurt someone's feelings. That said, at the same time, when you go onto an improv show, you do sign yourself up for anything could happen. And if someone does literally say something that you think, I wish I hadn't mentioned my chin, or I wish, I hadn't mentioned my receding hair, or I wish they, didn't talk about height. You have to be a little bit forgiving. You can perhaps have a word with someone afterwards, be like, we usually dodge around that, or if we couldn't highlight that in future, that would be great. But realise that, most people aren't going to go on stage and try and upset you or bully you. So if something does come out, just talk about it in a sensible, mature, adult way, and hopefully then that will get resolved. When it comes to physical stuff, if you're told that you're two professional wrestlers, then you might think, we're going to, I'm going to put you in a headlock. Perhaps don't do that. There's other things you can do. It's not that you have to grab someone. Don't just grab someone. You don't know, they may have had a neck injury, they may have a bad back. You don't know if they've got spinal problems or, just whatever. Some people just don't like their neck touched. And it's a case of, okay, you're told you're two lovers. Why don't you kiss and make up? You may now kiss the bride, says the person playing the vicar. And you may not want to kiss this person. It might be that this person is guesting on your show and they've brought their boyfriend or girlfriend to the show to watch, and then for the first time, it might be the first time they're even watching their boyfriend or girlfriend, and then they're kissing some stranger on stage. It might not go down well with them. You can't assume that you can just definitely have that physical, intimate connection, touch, whatever. So get to know who you're working with slowly before you start to do these things. Work out what people's boundaries are. If you meet them before the show, you can just quickly check in. But also, I've spoken about, and I'm going to move on now from the ideas of, you shouldn't do this, and personal space and boundaries, and, could this be called harassment, and people will come after me and cancel me, and all that stuff. We don't want any of that to happen. But let's move on from that now, and let's talk about some of the positives, working with someone you've never met before. So let's say you're doing like a short form game, and it could be an alphabet scene, questions only, freeze tag, film and theatre styles, or whatever. Hope for the best that they understand what the game is. Now, an improvised scene should be a shared experience between all performers on stage. But if you're working with someone and you don't know that they're going to know what the game is, that they're going to know the rules, you may have to a little bit lead the way. And it's not a bad thing to think, right, I'm going to dominate this scene. And I'm sorry, I'm not saying you have to dominate the scene, but it's not a bad thing to say, okay, I know what I'm doing, and for the benefit of our audience which are paid to watch us, or even if they haven't paid to watch you, our audience which have taken the time out of their day to come and watch you, they want to get a good show. So as the audience are watching you, whatever the game is, make sure you're sticking to that game's rules. Make sure that you are fulfilling your half of the promise. And if the other player doesn't quite know the game, hopefully they will see your example. So if they're doing something which you think, that's not how this works, don't let it devolve into, now I'm going to go wrong as well because they went wrong. Yeah, they went wrong, so then it messed me up. Just be a leader on stage and fulfill your end of the promise to the audience. I'm going to do this. Hopefully your scene partner will pick up on it. The great thing about most improv is that you often have a moment where you can break the fourth wall. So if you're in a questions only scene and the other person doesn't ask a question, you could be like, are you sure that was a question? Was that a question? And little things just to give the big hint, give a nod and a wink to the audience, not to be like, the other person's completely going wrong, but to try and clue them in. Yep, everything's got to be a question. Did you know everything has to be a question at the moment? And then, really give them the eyes, and hopefully they'll pick up on it. Hopefully you'll have an MC who may be able to give an amusing interjection just to help them along the way. If you're doing a film and theatre style scene and you're told that you're in a rom-com and they're acting like it's a horror film still, you could just be like, you could acknowledge, so have you seen many rom-coms? Or something, just like a little, I'm not saying you should always point things out and direct on the fly, but sometimes it really helps just to say, hey, this is what we're doing, and that can help you along. If you're in a scene and you don't know what you're doing, say you go and turn up to a show and they've got a short form game and you don't know what the hell's going on, a great thing you can do is, once again, give that acknowledgement to the audience. I don't know this game, I've never played this before. Something even as blatant as that will suddenly mean that the audience will understand that, okay, this is why they don't seem like they know what they're doing, but also it will get the audience on your side. They will be willing you to do well. It will also, if they're not going to pick it up subtly, it will clue up your scene partner. This person doesn't know what they're doing in the scene, and hopefully they will step up and they will lead you and guide you through the process. But so these are some big obvious things, big obvious things. Don't invade people's personal space. Big obvious things. If you don't know an improv game, or you don't think your scene partner knows the improv game, you can very quickly and efficiently clue them in, or even clue the audience into, this is going to be a bit of a weird one because we don't all know how to do this. But let's say that you don't want to be that blatant and that obvious. Let's say you're just in a scene with someone, and I would say go back to some of the basics if you want to just build up a rapport with your scene partner. Eye contact. You wouldn't believe how useful eye contact is. I always tell people when I teach and direct, when we talk about something very basic, and again, this is a basic, make sure you do it. Stagecraft, make sure that the audience can mostly see your face. Don't put your back to the audience. Doesn't mean you can't ever turn around, but you don't want to be talking upstage. Downstage is the direction towards the audience, upstage is towards the back of the room. Make sure that the audience can see your face. If the audience can see your face, then I always say that they will be reading your face. They'll be reading your facial expression. They will also hear you better, but they will look to you to see how you're reacting to determine how they are feeling. In that same sense, if you look at your scene partner, you can look to see how they're reacting, how they're feeling. And this is both on the level of them as a performer and, in a sense, more importantly, their character. Because obviously, hopefully, they are acting on stage with you. And so you want to read what their character is feeling so you can respond appropriately. If you don't look at them, if you blank them, then it's going to have a slight disconnect in the scene. Now, when you're really, really comfortable with someone, you can perhaps do that. But if you're not as comfortable with someone, and it may be that you just haven't met them before, then get some eye contact going. Look at them in the face, read them, listen to them, listen. Take turns. Know that, okay, this performer I'm working with, if I always interrupt their sentences, because that's what I think my character would do and it's funny right now, it might close them down. It might think, oh God, I'm always being interrupted. They might lose their train of thought quicker than you may. They might be nervous working with someone new. So listen to them, respond to them. They'll respond back to you. Make sure you're sharing the stage, sharing the dialogue time, sharing the focus, and it will help you build that connection. It'll help you build a rapport on stage. Doesn't mean things have to be really slow, but don't always think, oh God, this person lacks energy, so I'm going to come in with energy. And as soon as they say something, I'm just going to take lead and take over take over charge of the stage, etc., etc. So you get what I mean. Share the stage, get a sense of who they are. Often improv groups, they will do like a little ritual kind of thing where they'll say, I've got your back, and they'll give you a tap on the shoulder before you go out there, and that's really good. It's really nice. I've got your back is what people say to each other before they go out there. And I had this recently when I guested on a show, and I knew exactly what it was, but it wasn't something, not to say extreme improv players don't have each other's back, but we just don't do that ritual. Perhaps we should. Maybe we will in the future. There's nothing wrong in it, and I'm sure some of them do actually say it to each other. But I was like, oh yeah, I've got your back too, and it was nice. Just know that when you go out there, even if you don't say it, and this thing with extreme improv, even if we haven't said that to each other, we all know we've got each other's back. We're going to help each other throughout the scene. We're going to help each other get from minute 1 of the show to minute 1 hour to minute 2 hours of the show. We're going to help each other along. And often in extreme improv, we have guest performers. If you're the MC of a show, just let the audience know. So we've got some guest performers today. Just set that expectation that these players are new. That midway through a show, you can give a reminder, or even if you need to say for the first time, say for the first time, oh, this was this player's first time doing this today. I threw them right in the deep end. Aren't they doing well? Give them a round of applause, and everyone in the audience will be supportive. It's a funny thing with an audience. Audiences love to see improvisers struggle because you're making stuff up on the spot, and that's where the fun comes. But at the same time, no one wants to see people fail. Everyone wants to have a good show and enjoy it. No one wants to see people do something and it becomes boring or cringy. They want you to do well. So if you're doing something for the first time, you're the instant underdog story, and they're willing you on to do well. So, any other tips I can give you on this? Perhaps come back to this subject another day, as with all of them. But I would say, just to reiterate, be aware of people's personal boundaries. If you can, check in with people about what their experience or what they're comfortable with before a show, do so. If you can't, make sure you get lots of eye contact. Make sure you help a performer along if you think they're struggling. Make sure you ask for help if you're struggling. And you can do this literally in the show if need be. And go out there and, embrace the unknown a little bit, have fun with it. Anyway, so these are some very improvised thoughts on this subject. There's definitely going to be some other thoughts and things that I could have said that I haven't thought of, that I'm going to kick myself later for not thinking of, but you may have thought of. So if you've thought of them, put them in the comments somewhere. Put them on the comments on Facebook or on YouTube, or if you're listening to this to a podcast app, tweet us, any of these things. So I'll just wrap this one up. This has been David Postansky on the Extreme Improv Podcast Skill Show. It's not the only podcast we do. We also do our comedy show, our audio comedy show, the Extreme Improv Podcast Radio Rumble. We haven't had an episode for these last couple of weeks of the chat show. That's just because we're lining up some more guests, but that will be back very soon, where we speak to different improvisers, actors, comedians, and so on and so forth, just about improv and anything else that comes up in the conversation. There's also the Games Monster video game podcast, the Mega Movie podcast, and the Superkick Mania Pro Wrestling podcast. And coming very, very soon, it's a little bit later than I planned, the Extreme Improv Podcast Book Club, which is going to be one to look out for. Anyway, until next time, this has been the Extreme Improv Podcast Skill Show. Thank you very much, and bye!